historical insight. So, you know, this is only a start. To get firm historical insight, I really think you have to get a feel for the whole area. Same as you go into Baghdad today, and if you don't have a firm historical insight, Americans are just learning what's going on in that place. You know, I mean, they may not have gone in if they had known what the currents were there. Who knows? They may have. I don't think it's a totally futile idea to try to do what they're trying to do. Apart from the negative anti-war sort of vibe you always get in all societies at all times and places, it is to some extent noble what they are attempting. Whether it's being done well or done for noble reasons, I don't know. But the point is that what they claim to be trying to achieve there has a certain nobility to it, if misguided. So I don't want to get into the evaluation of it, but if you don't know the area, you might think twice about it before you get to know it. Now they're just learning. They're learning what they didn't know before. There's Shiites, Sunnis, Kurds. There's Sunnis who are pro-Western, Sunnis who are anti-Western. There's you know, all kinds of different terrorist groups. I mean, there's all kinds of agendas, and the Army actually is doing a good job in beginning to assimilate and learn about these things. You hear the generals speak, and they actually speak knowledgeably, which is really a plus. I'm sure it's actually much more knowledge they're displaying than they knew in Vietnam in terms of sensitivity to local culture. For instance, they knew they shouldn't go into the Shrine of Ali. They understood that that would trigger even maybe worse effects and things like that, and then they held back and stuff. So that shows a good deal of cultural awareness, sophistication, and sensitivity. That's the kind of thing that you need to begin to decide whether a thing is worth doing or not. Same here. Without this information, I don't like to bore you. You really are at square one. So you've got four empires, or rather four. It's pictured in a famous biblical book as four kingdoms. What book is that? Four winds, kingdoms from the four winds of the earth. If you, how many know your Bibles? It's the book of Daniel, where the dreams he has always have to do with four kingdoms. He has two different kinds of dreams or visionary experiences because he's got several visions that he interprets in the book of Daniel. How many have read the book of Daniel? That is considered, though it's written under Daniel's name, and then again, here's where religious groups and scholarly groups argue with each other. People who take the Bible literally will say, oh, well, Daniel lived in the 6th century BC, that's a prophet, you know, foreseeing things that are going to happen 200 or 300 years down the pipeline, or even 500 years down the pipeline. Scholars don't accept credulity of that kind, even though it's naive and well-meant and innocent, trusting. In other words, a believing person often trusts the writer who they're reading. Whereas if I put the same thing in the New York Times or the Orange County Register today, you wouldn't trust it. So again, often, as I said, you trust what's in the past rather than what you wouldn't trust in the present. So they think that Daniel had these powers. Scholars think that Daniel wrote in the Maccabean period, and therefore was very aware of what was going on. And there are indications in the book of Daniel to back that up. I don't want to get into all that. I do that in my Dead Sea Scrolls class. But I can tell you that there are textual things in the text of Daniel to indicate that each of the visions comes down to the Maccabean uprising and stops. Every vision, so it almost testifies to the fact that the writer knew what was going to happen down to the Maccabean uprising, but he didn't even know the outcome of the Maccabean uprising. He didn't even know if it was going to succeed or fail. And that comes out pretty clear if you read it carefully. So most of us think that the final form, it may draw on earlier documents and literary enterprises that are incorporated into it, which is a very disjointed book, but it seems to be written right in the midst of the uprising by an observer who was sympathetic to the uprising. the saints of the Most High God who made war on the abomination of the desolation, all these famous things, if you know religious history, that are in Daniel, are really the Maccabean army making war on the statue of the Olympian Zeus that the Greek overlords put in the temple in order ultimately to purify it. Now, I know you say that seems like a very one-sided interpretation of Daniel. Well, if you look at it carefully, you'll find that more or less all these indications are there, but you wouldn't know it if you didn't look carefully. If you just take it as superficial meaning, it doesn't say anything like it. So he knows about, for instance, he knows not only about the four kingdoms of the four winds, he knows about a succession of kingdoms that he represents in terms of animal life. I think he has one is a leopard, another is a bear, another is a lion with horns, another is a goat, or so on. In any case, it always turns out that he gets down to the 10th or the 11th, the horns of the different kings usually of this given empire. And it gets down to the 10th or 11th horn, which is the Antiochus Epiphanes, the figure in the Hanukkah stories that the Maccabean warriors are fighting against, and is the evil demon, if you like, of the Hanukkah festivities. It always goes down to him. He has a mouthful of boasts, and he's going to be uprooted and so on. If you look at the visions, and then you read the Maccabee books, you see that he's described in the same way. These are contemporary writings. And so it's quite clear that it knows history down to that period. So one of the beasts is the Persian Empire. Another beast is the Medes. Another beast, depending on the hairy he-goat that comes from the west, is Alexander. And it's quite, even though the history is represented in terms of kind of Aesop's fables, animal stories like Disney, Walt Disney, it's pretty clear what is being presented there. When I say the kingdom of the four winds, that's a later situation after the death of the Greek king, when his kingdom is divided to the four winds, and that is the four successor generals of Alexander the Great. One in Greece proper, back in Macedonia, wherever it was. Another in Asia Minor. A third in Syria. And a fourth in Egypt. The generals took over those areas and established many dynasties of